number 4606, an act relative to the penalties for the crime of female genital mutilation. And I want to thank our colleagues in the House, my partners in this bill who led the way, Representative Jones, my friend and colleague Representative Livingstone, and Representative Higgins, who have sought to see that leadership in the House move this bill forward and over to us. And I'm honored today that we will take this most important piece of legislation up. And I want to thank the Senate President for her leadership on this issue, as well as the gentle lady from Worcester who previously had filed this bill and worked on this bill in the last section, and the gentleman from Acton, who was the chair of the Judiciary Committee and ensured that this bill was reported out in some form to ensure that we could take this up again. This bill will take the critical steps necessary towards ending female genital mutilation in the Commonwealth. It does so by creating education prevention programs targeted towards communities with a high risk of genital mutilation. This legislation creates interagency partnerships directed towards prevention. It sets fines and sentences at a state level for those who commit female genital mutilation or remove a child from the Commonwealth with the sole purpose of carrying out this ungodly practice. For over 20 years in the United States of America, the practice of female genital mutilation was illegal. In 1996, Congress passed a law to ban this practice across the country. In 2018, however, a federal district court overturned this 1996 federal law. In their decision, although the court agreed that this practice was despicable and the mutilation and cutting and that action was tantamount to criminal assault, they still did overturn that law. The decision of the appeals court, by overturning that law, stated that Congress had overstepped its authority in passing a ban on action that was outside of the Interstate Commerce Clause. However, further, the decision did direct states, as we are doing today, to implement their own bans on female genital mutilation. Now, since the court's 2018 decision, 38 states have passed laws banning female genital mutilation. And now, today, it is our time to act. Female genital mutilation involves partially or totally removing the external female genitalia, typically through a very painful cutting process that serves no medical purpose. And while the practice is most common in Africa, in Asia, and some parts of the Middle East, female genital mutilation is also widespread in immigrant communities and metropolitan areas within the United States, and was even performed by doctors through the 1980s. It is critically important that we recognize that the practice of female genital mutilation and cutting is not a medical surgery. It's a method to control a woman's anatomy. And don't just take my word for it, but the countless medical professionals, legal experts, human rights activists, practice. More so, not only is female genital mutilation medically harmful, but it creates a long-term emotional trauma. And Mr. President, while I can speak to the importance of this legislation, my words will in no way begin to reflect the experiences and resilience, quite honestly, of survivors of female genital mutilation. To hear the personal testimony of survivors is to really understand the painful, lifelong implications of this practice. Survivors who have to relive their trauma every time they express the importance and urgency of ensuring that not one other woman or girl in the Commonwealth becomes a victim to this abuse. At this time, I would like to take the time to thank a survivor and the foremost advocate in the Commonwealth for this ban, Maria Tahir, who not only has displayed a tremendous amount of courage in sharing her story for the last 2 years in these halls, but also as a founding member of SEO. And by founding SEO, Maria has empowered countless other survivors to share their stories. I think the gentle lady from Worcester would tell you that when she first filed this bill, it was hard to have survivors come forward and share their story. The trauma and emotional damage that this practice has caused made them telling their stories somewhat humiliating. So I want to again thank Maria for her work in empowering those voices and giving a voice to those that were otherwise voiceless. And today we have the opportunity to do the same. Massachusetts has a legacy of leadership on issues related to reproductive rights and gender equality. And it is time we continue this commitment by rising up with 38 other states in the United States and move to ban the practice of female genital mutilation. When considering banning the practice, we must consider the devastating impact of doing nothing. There's no issue, there's no question, there's no reason that this practice still occurs in the United States. Even the justice who wrote the opinion believed the same. And from the testimonies of survivors, we also know that female genital mutilation is an unfettered practice carried out even here in Massachusetts. Without action, without banning female genital mutilation in Massachusetts, we risk not only the health and security of girls in the Commonwealth, but the health and security of those who will be brought from other states to this state, where other states have already passed this awful act. So perhaps now more than ever, this matter is more pressing and more urgent that we conduct this ban because the isolating conditions created by COVID-19 pandemic may have exacerbated the risk of becoming a victim, as most women who are forced to undergo this awful cutting practice are done so by their own family members who they're living with. And it further has perpetuated and could perpetuate the silence of survivors. So again, I want to thank Maria Tahir for having the courage to come forward and share her story with so many of us, for turning her tragedy into a triumph from future victims of this awful, awful practice. So today we must pass female genital mutilation ban this year to protect the health and safety of young girls and young women in this Commonwealth. And Mr. President, when a vote is taken on this matter, I'd ask to be taken by call, the ayes and the nays.